Hi everyone, my name's Lucy McKay. Thanks for having me. It's been great. It's really great to follow the previous speakers. So I haven't actually written out exactly what I was going to say because I knew people were going before me and I didn't want to repeat, although my story is a bit different because our organisation is different really to the majority that I come across. And I'm definitely an accidental CEO. I don't think, especially when so many people, their child is born with a condition that they'd never heard of and they never expected their lives to go in that direction. I don't think many people expected themselves to be in the positions we're in, maybe, but I'm actually second generation of that because my mother was also an accidental CEO. My Medics for Rare Diseases, its true history starts long before I was born. My eldest brother had a rare condition, and this is my mum. This is me. I think I still have that blanket. And that is at I think it's a Italian event. So my brother died before I was born, and my mum started a patient group, which started very kind of similar like with you, Sue. Obviously there was no Facebook. This was in 1982, I think, and I was born in 1986. And so this is how I grew up. I grew up going to rare disease events. The disease is MPS, and it was all I knew, and I'm the sibling. The difference for me, I guess, is I never met my sibling who had already died, but I got the MPS Society, and because of that got incredible insight and privileges that I didn't know I was different. I didn't know other people lived in different ways, just like no child who lives in that kind of a bit strange situation did. So that's my mum with two of my dear friends who are no longer with us, Hendrik and Emily Volk from Germany. There's me with my parents had only had boys, so they only knew how to do haircuts for boys. And then that naturally went into, it was a charity. I cleaned the first office. My first job working when I was 13, don't know if you're allowed to do that, was cleaning the office, packing the newsletters, packing the information packs for the conferences, doing the care plans for the children. Then I was volunteering. Then I was a coach leader, which was quite a title. Then I was head of the volunteers. And so this was my norm. This is me volunteering in Venice. Jackson is also sadly no longer here, but what a wonderful guy he was. And that's the theme, is that most of my friends from MPS are no longer around, and that was my norm. I also know what it's like to be the wrong side of the hospital bed. That's me in a back brace when I was 16. I'm trying to pull it off, not sure if it's working. I had a scoliosis. It was idiopathic, which I think means we don't know what it is, maybe we will later. So I had a big back operation at Stanmore, and then I had to wear this back brace for 6 months. I was on long waiting lists and all of this kind of thing. So I don't have a rare disease myself, but in a way I have experience of being in the NHS system for a long time, and the disability that comes after a massive back operation. For some reason, I thought it would be a great idea to become a doctor after all this, and I did. I became a doctor at Barts in London. Is where I did my studies. This says therapy dog for overworked doctors and nurses. I'm actually on a march here, I have to admit, and that's one of my really good friends who helps volunteer for Medics for Rare Diseases. So how did I end up being the CEO of a charity? When I went to medical school, I realised why nobody gets diagnosed. That's a little bit flippant, but I'd grown up hearing all these stories at the bar at the Hilton in Northampton, you know, blah, blah, got diagnosed on holiday, and this person got diagnosed because they happened to be walking past that person, and all these serendipitous diagnoses. And there was always this feeling of like, there should be teaching for this in medical school. And it just seemed so obvious. And then I went to medical school, and it suddenly became very obvious why that's not possible. There's over 7,000 rare diseases, and most doctors may never see a person with that rare disease. Meanwhile, you've got obesity, COPD, type 2 diabetes, and other conditions that doctors need to be able to treat to a high standard. And there's limited time on a curriculum. And it was just like my two worlds collided, and I guess I just couldn't escape I did go to medical school late, so the 24 years that happened before then, I couldn't pretend that didn't exist. And all those people that I had met and all those friends that I had lost, that they didn't exist. So I started putting on with some friends who had no personal connection with rare diseases and just are lovely people, putting on events at medical school. This was obviously massively helped by the fact that my mum was now the CEO of a big charity. She had contacts, and so we got ridiculously good speakers for these late evening post lectures events. And the idea was that maybe we can't cover these diseases at length in curriculum, but we could do some extracurricular events just to do something. And that got picked up as quite a good thing to be doing, basically. So I started BARTS in the London Society of Rare Diseases with my colleagues, and I have to say 2 of the original founders are still on our board. This was in 2011, and they are trustees now. But it became hard because you don't want to teach about one disease but not another. And how those diseases get picked, is it to do with whether you've got services commissioned? There's inequality there. And actually what we found in putting on these lectures is that really people go away, the doctors go away and they haven't, the medical students don't know the minutiae of the condition, but they listen to the patients. We had Lara Bloom from EDS UK speak, and my goodness, when you hear her story, that's what people take away. So we started Students for Rare Diseases, and bringing it back to leadership. Am I a leader? I'm a leader sometimes, and the next second I'm being led. I'm not always a leader. I think round about here, I was a leader telling people what to do and being bossy because I had an idea and I knew it would be good. And then round about there, I became very much not a leader. And Tanya Collin-Histed, she really picked up on what we'd started, and then she started to lead me to somewhere where I never knew I would get. And then Students for Rare Diseases was trying to emulate what we had done before, but around the country. Around about then I graduated, and it all became extremely difficult because doctors do work incredibly difficult rotas, huge numbers of hours, and unpredictable, and we could never coordinate because if one of us was off, the other one was on. And it got difficult, and I have to give a shout out to Tanya again, because it would have stopped. It would have stopped if I hadn't had her helping, just keeping it going during my junior doctor couple of years. And I took a locum year, which meant that I could choose my hours. I fully intended to go back into medicine, absolutely, but the investment of my time just made this grow. And that's when the learning just really started, because now I had the time, and I thought, I'm actually gonna do this. I'm really gonna do this. And we'd been talking about changing to Medics for Rare Diseases, and becoming an independent organisation, because we'd been so wonderfully supported by the LSD Collaborative, but we needed to be our own organisation so that we could, just have that place in the community, but also apply for funding and not take up the resources of other small charities. So that's when I really started to learn, I guess, about creating a patient group. And really I learned a lot from the members of the LSD Collaborative, Rick and Find a Cure, Rare Revolution, just to name some charities and people that I was just trying to absorb off. But my husband worked at the time for a company called Procter & Gamble, and he was like, right, you need an OGSM. I was like, what's that? So OGSM, I've just looked it up because we just call it OGSM. Objectives, goals, strategies, and measures, I found out, because I had previously been a medical student and doctor. I know nothing about business. I wasn't allowed to do business studies at school because I was a girl. So the boys' school could do it, but we definitely weren't allowed. And so he said I needed to have this OGSM, and so what's my objective? It's changed now. I think my objective now is that there should be fundamental rare disease teaching in the medical school curriculum and in continued professional development throughout healthcare training, because you can't ignore a population of 3.5 million people, but nor can you do massive coverage of 7,000 rare diseases. So there needs to be core education. What are my goals within that? So goals within that are things like we work on an essay competition with Find a Cure, we create events, we make links for medical students and doctors with patient groups. And or maybe that comes under strategies. I'm not really selling OGSM right now. And how do we measure it? The idea is, I'm sure my husband could tell you, but the idea was I needed to just focus. And I think at that point, what really focused me to make it get better is what don't you do is almost more important than what do you do. And we get, because of our title, sadly, so many people with desperate stories coming to talk to us, but we're not a patient-focused group. We're not patient-facing. We are medical professional, and we're not even medical professional-facing. Technically, we're medical students and doctors in training. I looked, there are 300,000 doctors on the UK GMC register. If we say that we're targeting all doctors, that is a huge target audience. And are we targeting someone who's already interested in rare disease and knows like the absolute detail about a specific rare disease? No, we're not. We're after the unconverted. We're after people, doctors who might leave you on a list of 10 symptoms with no diagnosis. We want them to be thinking about reviewing. So at that point, we had a really focused idea. What do we want to do? Who are we targeting? And we love everybody else, but we'll try and direct them somewhere else because we can't do it, and we want the best people to be doing that job. I think that is the core to my leadership. And then I can't speak, I always think of myself as a little bit of a imposter syndrome in the rare disease world, because I wasn't a sibling. I am a sibling, but I wasn't there. But I have some experience that I think helps me be able to bring in the opinions and experiences of each person. So whether it's we need a patient voice on this, a patient group voice on this, or a doctor's voice on this, because we're not about bashing doctors, we're about equipping and enabling them. So we need to know, well, no doctor's going out there saying, I don't want to diagnose people today. What's inhibiting people from making those diagnoses, and how can we help that? And so, yes, am I a leader? I'm a leader in some things. I'm led heavily in lots of things, which is comfortable for me. I like that. One of my learnings, and something I would definitely advise to everyone, again, like you said, Becky, our chair has nothing to do with rare diseases. He's got nothing at all to do with rare disease, but he has a very successful startup, and he also used to be my husband's boss, which is how I knew him. And he keeps us just always remembering we're also a business. We're not a commercial business, we're not making profit, but we need to be making strategic decisions, and we need to think like a business. And because of his distance, he helps us, he really helps medics for rare disease look after itself, if that makes sense. And I think that would be one of my key pieces of advice for anyone. Look at your board, make sure you're recruiting people who are going to help you for free, and get people who have a little bit of distance but the skills that you need. Thinking about how you get volunteers and people who you're not paying to do stuff. We use tools like Asana, a project management tool which puts deadlines on things, and people get notifications, and if they don't do it, they get so many notifications. So using tools like that helps chivvy people along without you having to feel like you're nagging them all the time. Slack, I get told off by my trustee Dan all the time if I don't put it on Slack, because that is an online, what would you call it, like a chat place where you can put your documents, you can have a chat about your board meeting or a chat about your next coming event, and have it all in one place. And then we come to our board meetings and we can have focused board meetings. And if your trustees haven't read the stuff that you have spent weeks trying to compile, it's not your fault. And you can be like, well, as you've all read the documents. I'm sure everyone's trustees always read the documents on time. Mine definitely do, in case this goes out to them. Deadlines and named responsibilities, putting someone named to each thing. And like, one of our trustees has no time. She's a doctor who at the moment is just in a part of her training where she's got no time. But we said, right, you're in charge of the essay competition, doing the marking and delegating to whoever can do it. And she does that. It makes her feel great because it's her one thing that she can do apart from the basics, and she knows she's in charge of it. I've got a list of things that I didn't know, right? Anything about business, anything about accounting. It turns out that cash is queen, so I recruited an accountant to my board, which was brilliant. I've been scared of spending money, I think, because of that, but that's not always the best decision for your charity, and I think that's where someone with a business mind comes in, that sitting on money isn't going to get you anywhere. So just because you're scared about not getting funding doesn't mean you shouldn't be doing it. Didn't know anything about social media, and I really would rather, I didn't want to get involved. And I didn't know anything about branding, and I obviously ended up having conversations with people where I'm like, I want it to look like Find a Cure. I want to have they have these things that makes things look nice. I don't know what it's called. It's called assets. So I've learned that. But I have these conversations with people, and I think the reason I get away with it is because I just, again, like Becky, I try to be as candid as possible. I could tell you a lot about putting a catheter in, but none of that turns out to be useful doing what I'm doing. But I try to be as candid as possible about the things I don't know. But what I do know is I truly believe in what we're doing, and I think it's good. I think it's making a difference. I'm on a high with it at the moment. The lows are very low, and I'm on a high, so you've got me a good moment. So, and I think lastly, it would be that I always ask and I always try to help, or I always try to point someone, because we're all in the same business, aren't we? And we're all doing it for the same reasons. So that's my leadership journey.